Hello and welcome to this edition of Daily Actives brought to you by Bootleg Macro. We're going to be looking at Tesla here. Looks like in the past week or so, we've really seen that 200 level get rejected by Tesla, and we're already down around 165. Go ahead and look at the daily chart based on the action we have for this Monday here. We can see that the Tesla prices continued to fall. It hit a low of 158. It did open at 164 and ultimately closed at 162. So we can see that generally for the day, it did fall down, but it did rise back up towards the end of the session. Go ahead and look at how the sentiment is shaken out here for Tesla. We can see that sentiment is essentially around the 50% line when it comes to the daily fast sentiment. One of the things here is that this generally wants to be somewhere around 50%. So we'd say right now we're going to kind of have to trust what the price trend is doing, but we're not going to get a lot of follow through in either direction, bullish or bearish. We'll go ahead and look here at the weekly sentiment indicator. We can see is that it looks like essentially bullishness is starting to rise. That moving average looks like it's inflecting up a little bit, and potentially we've seen the bottom in Tesla bearishness. We'll continue to see as the daily price action changes. Now we're going to look at the volume here for the weekly volume on Tesla. Again, if you're watching in my previous videos, we essentially have seen a gigantic ramp in Tesla volume into the beginning of 2023. It really looks like we've continued to see a little bit of a fall, but recently we've seen a spike back up, trading over 668 million shares in a week. That is a ton. Now we'll go ahead and look at the daily volume here. We can see for Teslas that it actually looks like volume is potentially bottomed. Again, very similar to what we saw on the weekly. It looks like it hit this bottom sometime around April 6th, earlier in the month, and now it continues to rise. It looks like we're just continuing to rise. We're probably going to start breaking over 200 million shares being traded in a day, similar to what we saw here on 420. What we saw at the very end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, if we start to get more follow through. Let's go ahead and look at the Tesla volatility. As expected, based on the price move, we're seeing a big increase in volatility recently. You see that on the 20th of April, volatility hit its very much low as the correlation was high, and with volatility falling, that would actually be an indication that price would fall. Now that we're seeing that volatility is actually rising and correlation is still high, we'd expect price to rise. We'll have to monitor and see if correlation starts to fall. It did go down from 60% down to 59% over the past couple of days. We'll just monitor that as we go forward. Now looking here at Tesla weekly volatility, we can tell essentially what we've seen is with the blue, the price volatility is continuing to fall, and the red, the correlation is continuing to rise. We have seen recently that it looks like the correlation is essentially kind of flatted or plateaued. So maybe it'll continue to rise and go completely positive, or maybe it'll go negative. If the volatility continues to fall and correlation continues to rise, we would expect that price would fall, specifically over the longer term. Now we're going to go ahead and look at the weekly non-sentiment trade range for Tesla. We can see that the high of it right now, you could get as high as $248, you could get as low as $95. With it being pretty much directly in the middle at the moment, I would expect that it's going to have more downside just because we've seen generally a bearish move since the beginning of, it looks like 2022. The very end of 2021 was the most recent high. It's essentially been in a bearish trend ever since. We're gonna go ahead and look at the daily trade range here. We can see that as volatility has gotten tight, the trade range got tight, but now that volatility is breaking out kind of like we looked at where it's breaking out from those lows recently. You can see the price is really following the bottom of its range. It could go all the way back up to 210. That looks like that'd be a good place to short it potentially based on the type of action that we've been seeing. Now we're gonna go ahead and look at the raw data for Tesla. This is gonna be where all the historical data comes from. So what we'll see is that today we have the 24th. We can see that we've recently seen the price fall significantly. On the 19th, it was at 180. The next day was at 162. I wasn't paying attention to the market that day, but I imagine there was some sort of catalyst, either earnings, an announcement, or some big news thing that came out. We can see that 210 was the recent high at the end of March of 2023. So with the top of the range that we saw in the sentiment trend range of being $210, that's very reasonable to think that we could go back up there, and then we'd possibly be able to short it going forward. It looks like right now I've got a series of go short signals, go short. I can see that I've been getting my bearish stop ever since. It looks like, let's just see what day this is. It looks like ever since the 10th of March, I've been getting a sell signal essentially. So you wanted to short anything that's been negative or anything that's been positive. This has essentially just been a quick breakdown of how I'd review Tesla. If you're ever curious about building something like this, I actually do have another video where I show you how to build the beginning of this kind of trade model for yourself. It's gonna be in the details, linking at the very end of the video. If you want to see it, check it out. If you don't, have a great day. Leave a comment below and I'll talk to you soon.